Snow fell like old secrets, quiet, slow, too heavy to lift. It blanketed the Wyoming plain in sorrow, dimming the world to shades of gray. The trees bowed under its weight, and the wind howled like a widow outside her own home. Somewhere in that hush, fire cracked, a sharp, living sound in the silence. Silas Boone tightened his grip on the reins and followed the smoke. He hadn't meant to find anything, just a rabbit trail gone long, and the hollow ache of solitude gnawing too loud in his ribs. But there it was in the clearing, a wagon turned to bones, flames licking the last of its frame. Its wheels were charred down to spokes. The canvas cover collapsed in on itself like a dying lung. Around it, snow melted into black slush, reeking of kerosene and ash. And in front of it, 3 figures. They were seated side by side in the snow, bound at the wrists and ankles. Sacks over their heads, faces hidden. Girls, he could tell by the size of them. Their dresses were torn, hair tangled and wind-blown. They did not move. He might have thought them dead if not for the faintest motion, one flinch, like a breath catching in a throat. He dismounted. The snow whispered under his boots. Each step felt too loud, too heavy in the stillness. He crouched a few feet away, steam curling from his mouth. The fire popped behind them, like a warning. Then, from the middle one, a voice, small, hoarse, and oddly steady. "We'll stay quiet, if you take them off." Silas flinched, hand to the hilt of his knife. The voice wasn't begging. It wasn't even afraid. Just tired. He moved closer. Leather creaked as he knelt. Snow soaked through his trouser knee. The girl's breathing was thin, but even. He reached out slowly, unsure what he feared more, that she was hurt or that she wasn't. He untied the knot. The burlap sack came free, with a shiver of dust. Underneath, bruises, dried blood, a split lip. But her eyes, blue as slate and clear, met his without flinching. "My name's Mercy," she said. "Don't ask what we were. Just help what we are." He didn't speak. Silas Boone hadn't spoken more than 10 words in weeks, and none of them had mattered. A man like him, forgotten by time and left by God, knew when something was too big for words. So he nodded once and moved to the next girl. This one whimpered under the sack. He gentled his voice, a rasp from disuse. "It's all right. I got you." Her name was Junie. Younger maybe, or just softer. Tears streaked her dirt-caked cheeks as he freed her. She blinked against the light and reached for his coat without asking. He let her cling. The last one sat perfectly still. He cut her ropes and eased off the sack. Her eyes were already open, dark, wide, unblinking. She didn't speak, didn't move. Just stared at him like she was seeing through bone and blood into marrow. He looked away first. They sat together in silence for a long moment. Fire behind them. Snow all around. 3 girls who should have been dead. One man who often wished he was. "You got names?" he asked finally. "They took 'em," Mercy said, helping Junie to her feet. "So we made new ones." The mute one tilted her head, curls sticking to her frozen cheek. "She's Nell. She don't talk." Silas stood. "You hurt?" Mercy looked down at her wrists. Not enough to stay down. They didn't ask where he came from or why he was alone. They didn't care. There was no time for pasts when the present was already burning. He brought them to the sled. Blankets piled in the back from his hunt. He wrapped them tight. Nell didn't blink when he touched her shoulder. Junie flinched but didn't pull away. Mercy helped lift the others in, despite her own shaking limbs. He tied down the packs and turned toward the wagon one last time. It collapsed inward with a final groan. Something metal cracked and screamed. "Who did it?" he asked. Mercy didn't look back. "Doesn't matter now." Junie buried her face into the coat. Silas climbed aboard, voice lower than the wind. "You run." Mercy looked forward into the trees. "We stopped running when they screamed." His jaw tensed. He'd seen what men could do when they thought no one would come looking. He'd seen what girls looked like after. He'd dug graves for some. They rode in silence. The wind picked up. Snow stung his face. He kept one hand on the reins, the other near the rifle at his side. Every few minutes, he glanced back. Junie dozed, her face pale as frost. Nell watched him without blinking. Mercy sat upright, hands clasped like a prayer no one would answer. When the cabin appeared between the trees, there was no welcome in it. Just timber and smoke and one bed too cold for dreaming. But it had walls. It had fire. And tonight that would be enough. He helped them down one by one. Junie first, still shaking. Nell next, still silent. Mercy laughed. As she stepped off the sled, she turned to him. "You're not saving us," she said softly. "You're just letting us become." Then she stepped past him, into the dark. He stood in the snow, breath thick in the air, heart knocking once, then twice, in a chest long quiet. The woods behind him groaned. The wind carried ashes into the stars. And the world, just for a moment, felt like it might still hold something holy. The cabin didn't speak, but the girls filled it with quiet noises that reminded Silas of things he'd forgotten. With creaking under bare feet, the hush of breath before sleep, the rustle of quilts as someone turned over without fear. Snow thickened outside, pressing against the windows like a secret begging to stay hidden. Inside, the fire crackled low, not for warmth, but to keep the silence from growing too loud. Silas kept his distance. He chopped wood when it wasn't needed, fixed hinges that didn't squeak. At night, he slept in the lean-to with the mule. Mercy took the loft. Junie curled beneath the stairs with a ragged doll she never spoke of. Nell stood by the window for hours, watching something far off none of them could see. They didn't ask him questions, and he didn't ask them stories. But change doesn't ask permission. It seeps in like thaw beneath ice. Mercy began splitting wood beside him. Her hands blistered, then calloused. Junie sang softly while cleaning the kettle, songs from nowhere, made-up tunes full of ache. Nell drew things on the frost, wolves, fire, stars with too many points. When they caught him looking, they didn't stop. One morning, the sun broke through the cloud bank, and Silas found a patch of earth freed from snow. A green shoot pushed up like a dare. Junie knelt to touch it, lips parted in wonder. Later that same day, boot tracks appeared by the barn. He saw them first, deep, deliberate, a stranger's gait. Not his. Not the girl's. Not Windrift. He followed them to the fence and stopped cold. A man had stood there for a while watching. No horse, no wagon. Just prints in and out, like a ghost pacing behind judgment. That night, Silas loaded the rifle. He didn't hide it. The knock came just after supper. Not timid. Silas opened the door to a man in a duster slick with melt, his face worn but not old, a pistol easy on his hip, and eyes that flicked past Silas into the room. "Boone," the man said. "Didn't think you'd still be breathing." Silas said nothing. "I'm tracking runaways," he went on. "3 of 'em. Young. Dangerous. One's mute, one cries all the time, and the other lies like a preacher on payday. You seen 'em?" Mercy stepped into view, quiet as smoke. The man's smile turned crooked. "Well now." Silas didn't lower the rifle. "They ain't yours," the man said, suddenly colder. "They ain't anyone's. Just goods that went bad." "They're people," Silas replied. Voice flat. Final. Behind him, Nell moved to the door's edge. Her eyes locked onto the man. She didn't blink. Didn't breathe. The man faltered. A shadow passed across his face, something ancestral, deep in the bone. He stepped back without realizing. "I'll be back," he muttered, retreating into the dusk. Silas shut the door, latched it, checked it twice. Mercy looked at him, not in fear, but as if measuring him. "You stayed," she said. "Didn't know I had a choice." "No one ever does." "Not really." The next day, Silas taught Mercy how to load the rifle. She learned faster than she should have. Junie asked for a knife. Nell just nodded when he handed her one. Something was growing in them. Not rage, something quieter. Dense as roots. Something that would never be moved again. The town began to whisper louder. Old man Griggs rode up and left a sack of beans at the gate, but didn't meet Silas's eyes. Mrs. Harkner crossed the street when she saw him in the supply store. "They're strange," she hissed to the clerk. "One don't talk. The other stares like she's cursed. And the blonde one, she don't smile like a child. She smiles like she's already seen how it ends." Silas paid with silence and walked out heavier than he'd entered. He didn't blame them. They feared what didn't bow. And the girls didn't bow to anyone, not anymore. Back at the cabin, Mercy read aloud from an old Bible with half its pages burned away. Her voice didn't preach, it remembered. Junie laughed once when Nell tickled her, and it startled all of them into stillness. Silas found himself smiling, not with joy, but with something softer, the ache of almost forgetting how. On the last night of snow, Mercy sat beside him on the porch rail, both of them looking out into the darkness that had once owned them. "You think we're broken?" she asked. "No," he said. "I think you were shattered, and now you're choosing which pieces to keep." She nodded, quiet. Nell opened the door. She had a drawing in her hand, for figures standing beneath stars, one holding a lantern. She gave it to Silas, then pressed her forehead to his chest. A gesture, nothing more. That was when he knew they'd never leave. Not because they couldn't, but because this small patch of earth, this splinter man, was theirs now. A place to finish becoming. He stepped inside. Behind them, winter broke. Ice cracked off the eaves. Trees sighed with the weight lifting. And though the world outside remained cruel and waiting, inside the cabin, for souls gathered their silence, wove it into strength, and let it hum like a lullaby in the beams. Some nights, Silas still slept lightly, fingers near the rifle, dreams thick with fire and blame. But in the morning, the kettle steamed, Junie sang, Mercy chopped kindling, and Nell watched the sky. And in those small, stubborn moments, the world felt survivable. Not because it forgave, but because something inside them had grown strong enough not to need forgiveness anymore.